Tales from the Patio, as told by Gabriel. Gabriel. Here's the patio. Once upon a time, in 1976, there was a little girl going to school one day. She got on her school bus with her two brothers, and they were being sent across town because in that time it was decided by the school district that children should be integrated and not segregated. So the Caucasian children were sent to the African American part of town, and the African American children were sent to the Caucasian part of town. This made for larger gas usage, longer times commuting, and oftentimes crowded buses. On this particular day in February, the bus was going at an average speed through an intersection of Siebenthaler and Main Street. The little girl who was on the bus with her brothers had just gotten her cast off of her broken arm, and she was so excited she could use her arms again. It was a day like any other day as the big yellow school bus traveled across town. It took approximately 40 minutes to get to a school out of her neighborhood, as opposed to 10 minutes it would have taken to go to a school in her neighborhood. This idea of desegregation lasted 2 years before the school district decided it wasn't a good idea. On this day in February, she was traveling along, and out of nowhere her brother was pulling on her hair like he always did. Tales from the Patio. Oh, you can see the fish jumping out there. Look at that. Once the bus went through the intersection, a brown Ford Pinto containing a 50-some-year-old mother and her 20-some-year-old daughter was traveling perpendicular to the bus. So when it got to the intersection, they decided in the brown Pinto, for whatever reason, they were going to drive through the red light. Now at that moment, no one was the wiser. All the children were just traveling along with no seat belts, because that's the way you did it back then. Maybe sometimes you still do it that way. At that second, the car hit the bus at the back right wheelbase, sending the bus on its side, and through the intersection it skidded before it came to a stop. Before the little girl knew it, she was on top of the inside of the bus, laying on her arm that had just been healed. It was mass chaos. When the bus tipped over, the little girl's brothers were also involved, and the oldest brother jumped through one of the windows from the top of the bus just to get out before anything could happen. He was the first one out at the age of 14. But he couldn't get his sister and his other brother out. He couldn't get anybody out. Because when the bus turned over on its side, it had spilled fuel everywhere. And the back emergency exit door was broken shut. No one could open it. No one could get out. The little girl was inside screaming for help. It seemed like nothing was going to be the same again. The bus driver was yelling at everybody to get in line. The bus driver herself suffered from a broken arm. While the kids were screaming and crying and nobody could get out of this bus. And the little girl's brother was frantically pacing on the sidewalk, waiting, screaming for help. People stopped and tried to help, but they couldn't lift the heavy emergency exit door. Till eventually a man came out from a gas station. And he brought his axe. And he chopped down the door with several people helping him. They all managed to get the door open and get the children out. The brother and two brothers and the little girl were reunited for a second on a patio of a nearby house. All the children were directed to get to the patio, where they waited for ambulances to come because there were so many children. They needed so many ambulances, and not all of the children could be taken to the same hospital. So the little girl and her two brothers were all separated, and they all went to different hospitals. And the oldest brother asked the ambulance driver, "Let me go with my sister. She's the youngest, and she just got her cast off." But they said, "No, you need to go to the hospital you're assigned." This was back in the day before cell phones. No one could call their parents. No one could text their friends. It was all left up to media. Media and police calls and authorities calling the homes of all the parents. Eventually all the kids were dispersed. They all went to the hospitals. The little girl was in her room with a little boy. He had been cut in the eye by some glass from one of the windows, and his eye was bloody. And the little girl said, Don't worry, Todd. Your mommy will come and find you. We just have to wait." But the little girl was so afraid that she was gonna have to get a cast back on that arm. Little did she know, her mother didn't know which hospital to go to first, which hospital had the child in the worst condition. Many parents were faced with this. So the mother called the father, and the father went to one hospital, and the mother went to another hospital, and no one could get to the third hospital where the little girl was. Time passed, and the little girl was placated with snacks. They gave her animal crackers and juice, but all she did was cry for her family. They took her to the x-ray room, and guess what? Her arm wasn't broken, so that was good news. Yay! Yay! Eventually, her mother walked into the room, and she was so happy again. Her brothers had ended up okay. And other than bruises and bumps, she was okay too. They put her arm back in a wrap, an ace bandage wrap, just and let it heal some more. And after that day, of course, school bus rides were never the same. So when you picture these school buses driving by, and you're in a hurry to get to work, or you're texting, or you're changing the radio station, or you're fixing your lipstick, just remember, there's so many factors that play into events in your life, and you need to be present in every moment. And this is what happened.